I think we trailed it in the promotional materials, but if we didn't, sorry about that. If everyone's happy, let's do it. Good. And I'll hand over to my colleague Neil Tomlin. Neil, Alan Williams, and I are all part of the steering group of the UK Values Alliance. Some others of you present are also part of the UK Values Alliance, but quite a lot of you are not. Over to you, Neil, to introduce today.
Well, good afternoon to everyone, first of all, and to extend to you all a very warm welcome for this event. The title, I suppose, gives a clue in terms of where the discussions are going to be centered. And as we all know, the whole subject of artificial intelligence is enormous. And clearly, we're not going to tackle that all this afternoon. Where we're focusing today is around the subject of values as the UK Values Alliance. That's where our focus is in promoting positive values in the UK. And I'd just like for you all to bear that in mind, particularly if you would like to ask questions after any of the exciting speakers that we've got, that they are based around values, because it's in the time we've got, it would be very easy to stray off. So it is about values. We're here to listen, I think, definitely to learn, and to maybe demystify. But principally, we are here to take a values-based view. And as some of you will know, this is a precursor to a main event that the UK Values Alliance organised, which is coming up on the 19th of October, which is World Values Day. And that's something perhaps that people would like to learn more about as a result of coming along today. So without further ado, Charles, I'm going to hand back to you to introduce the first of our speakers.
Thanks very much indeed, Neil. I'm now going to introduce Vali Aitken, who's going to speak to us for about 10 or 12 minutes, and then we'll have some questions and answers. So do prepare any questions you might have while she's speaking, without failing to listen to her, of course. Vali is an ethics fellow at the Alan Turing Institute. She's also a senior lecturer at the Queen Mary University, Queen Mary College in London, and also at the University of Wollongong in Australia, and is a well-known and very frequently speaking expert or specialist in ethics, and particularly the ethics of AI. Most of you will know that the Alan Turing Institute is the UK Centre for Artificial Intelligence. And Vali, over to you. We're very much looking forward to what you have to say.
Thank you, Charles. I'll just share my screen so I can share some slides. Okay, hopefully you can all now see my screen. Thank you, Charles, for the introduction. As Charles said, I'm an ethics fellow at the Alan Turing Institute, which is the UK's National Institute for AI and Data Science. And so in my role as an ethics fellow, my work looks at kind of ethical and societal dimensions of AI, and particularly looking at how we can kind of maximize the value and benefits of innovation, ensuring that the benefits of technologies are equitably distributed across society, while kind of identifying and mitigating the risks associated with new technologies. So I'm really delighted to have been invited here to this session today, and I'm really looking forward to what I think is going to be some really, really interesting discussions. In the next 10 minutes, I want to focus on, I guess, how values have shaped my own work around AI ethics, and the importance of values in addressing AI ethics, and as I say, kind of maximizing the value and benefits of AI technologies. AI is obviously very much a hot topic at the moment. There's a lot of interest in AI. I've been working in the area of ethics related to data-intensive innovation for about 10 years. And particularly focusing on AI for the last sort of 5 years or so. And it's been really interesting over those 5 years to see how kind of public discourse, public narratives around AI have really shifted and shifted quite dramatically over a fairly short period of time. And that's having really clear impacts on policy discussions and on regulatory discussions relating to AI, which is an area that I've particular interests in. I think a year ago, if you'd asked somebody what the term AI brought to mind, most people probably would have said something like self-driving cars, autonomous vehicles. A lot of people probably would have mentioned robots, and maybe people would have mentioned smart speakers, smart devices that we have in our homes, like Alexa or Siri or Cortana. And that's really changed quite dramatically over the last year. And I think, now if you talk to people about AI, mostly what comes to mind when we hear the term AI tends to be generative AI. So generative AI are forms of AI that we've been hearing a lot about over the last year. Very broadly speaking, generative AI are forms of AI, artificial intelligence, that can be used to create new content. So perhaps the most famous one being ChatGPT, which is a text generator. So we could use AI to generate text in a variety of styles. It's based on a large language model, so it's been trained on a huge model of data of human language, and from that it detects patterns within that language to be able to produce outputs that replicate how a human would respond to a particular prompt, or to communicate in different styles and different genres. There's also generative AI that can create images. So, for example, this image of the Pope in a Balenciaga puffer jacket, which is circulated quite widely in the media and online. This is obviously an AI-generated image. It's a photorealistic AI-generated image. Generative AI can also produce images in the style of paintings or drawings. And then there's also generative AI that can produce fake videos and even cloned or synthetic voices, which can very realistically replicate a real individual's voice. So there's been a lot of interest around generative AI over the last year. It's been almost a year since ChatGPT was released at the end of November last year. And along with this, there's been some fairly sensational claims around potential existential risks of new technologies, and also some fairly sensational hype around what these technologies might deliver, what they might offer, what the potential uses might be. And some of the risks that's come with that is that I'm increasingly seeing these discourses, these narratives around AI really being shaped and led by big tech perspectives, by industry perspectives. And often there's a suggestion that these technologies, these kind of advanced AI technologies, large language models, large AI models, the level of infrastructure that's needed to develop these models is really only exists within big tech companies, particularly Silicon Valley tech companies. And the suggestion is that in order to think about the potential harms or the risks, or to inform governance and regulation around AI, you need to have big tech shaping those discussions, because they're the ones who are developing these technologies. But that's a really dangerous position. It's a really dangerous suggestion that suggests that industry is uniquely positioned to think about the future of AI and think about how we use that ethically or safely. And of course, it's a bit of a distraction from all the ways that AI is already integrated into our lives, and all the ways that we're already interacting with AI on a daily basis. So the reality is that we all interact with AI in our daily lives, maybe on an hourly basis, maybe not even on a daily basis. There's AI that's integrated into smart devices in our homes, as I already said, like Alexa smart speakers, in our mobile phones. There's AI that processes information about us to make decisions about who gets access to finance, who gets access to housing. AI that shapes what adverts we see online, what things are marketed to us, and then the logistics of how things are delivered to us when we buy things online. And AI is also being used in things like healthcare to determine the healthcare that we receive, or to diagnose illnesses or conditions. And it's used in some very sensitive areas like immigration control and policing, facial recognition technologies that determine who gets stopped and searched in public spaces. And it's also being used to make decisions around education. So really, AI is impacting all areas of our lives, all areas of society, and is impacting all of us, although it impacts us all differently. And depending on our experiences, depending on our identities, the ways that the impacts that AI has in our lives will be different. And this really leads me on to thinking about, how do we address this, and how do we think about the future of AI? And preparing for the talk today, I thought, well, I'll come up with what are the values that really shape my approaches to AI ethics, and the values that I feel are important to think about the future of AI in society. And it's hard coming up with a concise list of values. I think, we could think of many values that are important here. But I think for me, the things that shape my approach and shape the way that I think about AI ethics and the future of AI is around fairness and equity, recognizing that these systems are having impacts on all of our lives, but those impacts are not equitable. We don't experience these technologies in the same ways. And so we need to think about how we ensure equity in terms of how the benefits are spread, but also recognizing that the harms and risks of these technologies are experienced differently. So I'm focused on fairness and equity. And as approaches to realize that, the approaches that I take are centered around inclusiveness and participation. And I think that is absolutely crucial to advancing AI ethics. I just want to very briefly kind of say a bit about what AI ethics means to me. As I said at the beginning, I'm an ethics fellow at the Alan Turing Institute. So my work is really focused on this area of AI ethics and thinking about what it would mean to develop AI systems ethically, and how we would embed ethics into development practices and also in governance of technology. One thing I want to stress really clearly at the beginning is that ethics is not the same as legal compliance. And so while we have regulations and laws that tell us what we must or must not do in terms of collecting and processing people's data or using technologies to make decisions about individuals, ethics goes beyond that. Ethics is beyond legal compliance. And it's not about the questions of what we must or must not do. Instead, it's about the questions of what we should or should not do. And those are really, really tricky questions. Those are questions that never have straightforward answers. They're questions that we won't have agreement on. We won't reach consensus on what we should or should not do. They're questions that will have different answers in different contexts and in relation to different communities or different people. And that's why these values of participation, of inclusiveness, of ensuring fairness and equity are really fundamental to advancing AI ethics. We need to have diverse perspectives and diverse interests to address these questions, to shape and to think about the future of AI. And addressing these tricky ethical questions always requires continual negotiation and judgment. They don't have simple answers, and they don't have answers that stay the same in different contexts or over time. So we need to keep engaging with different groups and thinking about how we think is what is the right way to use technology in a different context in relation to a different community. But what I also want to stress here is that AI ethics is not just about avoiding risk or harm. And I think often there's a misconception, there's often a misconception that discussions of ethics are all about avoiding harm or mitigating risk. And actually, that's a big part of it, of course, but it's also about maximizing the value of digital innovation and ensuring that the benefits of technology and the benefits of innovation are equitably distributed across society. So it's also thinking creatively about how we really maximize the value and benefits of innovation and of AI technology. Finally, I think I maybe have a couple of minutes left. Finally, I just want to finish with an example of a project that I work on and putting these values into practice. So at the Alan Turing Institute, I lead a program of work around children's engagement and children's rights in relation to AI. And this really stems from these underpinning values of fairness, of participation, of inclusiveness. A lot of the work that I do is about trying to bring underrepresented groups into discussions about AI and bringing underrepresented groups into informing policy, informing regulation, informing governance around AI. And children are definitely an underrepresented group within these processes. Children are also the group who are going to be most impacted by AI currently, but also in the future. AI is embedded within games that children are playing from very young ages, in interactive toys, but it's also integrated into education systems that children are interacting with, and it's playing roles within systems that make decisions about fundamental parts of children's lives: access to education, access to healthcare, access to housing. And as these children grow up, AI is increasingly going to impact their lives and shape aspects of their lives. So the work that I'm doing through a collaboration with the Children's Parliament and Scottish AI Alliance is seeking to involve children directly in decision-making processes. So the pictures you see here are from this project with the Children's Parliament, where we're engaging with 4 primary schools across Scotland and working with children between the ages of 7 and 11. I think they're now 8 and 12 because this project's been running for a year now. And the first stage was to kind of understand children's experiences of AI, understand what they know, what their concerns are, what their interests are, what their visions for the future of AI are. And in this current phase that we're now working on, these children are now engaging directly with policymakers, with developers, and seeking to inform decision-making processes around future directions of AI. And this is really exciting work and really important work. But also interestingly, a lot of the discussions that the children have are really values-based, really thinking about what are the values that matter to these children in shaping the future of AI. And a big theme in the discussions is around fairness, and how do we design these systems to be fair and equitable, to benefit and support children in their lives. So just to close, I just want to reflect on some of the key messages that I think would I be interested to discuss in this session. As I said, the values that are, some of the values that are really important in shaping the work that I do and the approaches that I take are around inclusiveness, equity, fairness, and participation. And that's really recognizing that the ways that AI is already touching all of our lives and impacting society, and the importance of ensuring that everybody has a say in shaping the future of AI. Clearly, AI will continue to play increasingly significant roles in all our lives and in our society. And considering ethical dimensions of AI is really important, both to maximize the value of those technologies, but also to mitigate negative impacts and risk associated with those technologies. Doing that, though, requires conversations that are not dominated by big tech perspectives or industry perspectives, and certainly not dominated by technical perspectives, but instead are shaped and informed by the views and experiences of people and communities who are impacted by the ways that these technologies are used. And that's a real focus in the work that I do. But finally, there are no simple solutions to ethical challenges around AI, but rather this requires continual negotiation, continual judgment, and really reflecting on the values that underpin approaches taken. And I think those values-based conversations are really fundamental to addressing these challenges and thinking about the path forward and the ways that we address tricky ethical considerations around AI. Thank you very much. And I'm really looking forward to taking part in the discussion today and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fari. That's fantastic. And my goodness, that was an energetic tour de force across the whole field of, well, not the whole field of values and AI, but a big chunk of it, and lots of insights there. We've got some minutes. We've got about 8 or 9 minutes to take some questions and answers, anyone's thoughts on what Fari has been talking about, the point she's raised. If you want to just have anyone put up your hands if you've got a thought, or raise your hands physically or using the gadget on your screen.
Charles, there's a question from Laurie in the chat.
Yeah, and do you want to read that out, Laurie, or?
Yes, it's fantastic to involve kids, but how is it actually possible to make them think critically and wisely towards AI?
Yeah, I guess that's a core part of what the project is about and doing. It's interesting because there are a lot of kind of stems of science, technology, engineering, maths focused approaches to engaging children with technology, with innovation. And often there the focus is on technical aspects and focuses on developing technical skills or thinking about children as kind of the future workforce or the future innovators in technology. And that's not the approach that we took in this project. This project is based on a children's rights approach. So we work with the Children's Parliament, and all their work is around children's rights. So when we worked with these children, we started with full-day workshops in schools, and the first half of those workshops was talking about the UNCRC, the UN Convention on Children's Rights, and talking to them about what their rights were. And then we introduced AI in that context. So it wasn't about, here's this exciting technology, here's how you could build it, here's the amazing things you could do with it. It was, there are systems that make decisions in your life. So there are technologies that you might interact with. What do you think about that? What do you think about how that impacts you, your community, your future? And that's kind of the context for the discussions. And then obviously there was a fair bit of learning about how these systems work, learning about how AI models are developed and trained, and learning about the biases within those systems, learning about the risks within those systems, learning about technicalities, but more focused on then what these technologies mean in children's lives. And I mean, yeah, the children were very ready to discuss the ethical risks and particularly thinking about children's rights. I think, and the questions around fairness, like, they really intuitively came from the children. That was a theme that I guess we would have liked to explore, but we didn't go into it thinking like, okay, these are the topics we're going to discuss. We went into it thinking like, let's introduce this to children and see what matters to them. And one thing that really matters to them is fairness, and that became a kind of central focus of the work, and continues to be a central focus of the work. But it's very much kind of child-led.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that question, Laurie. That's great. John, you had a question too, John Gray.
Thanks, Charles, and thank you, Mario. That was amazing. I've got to be careful here because I have a tendency to be verbose, as Alan and Charles have heard before. But I also am literally teaching a unit at School of Humanity called The Future of the Internet currently. And so I have a million questions, but I'm going to stick to one. The education space, at least in the kind of LinkedIn chamber of echoes and things like that, tends to be focusing on that practical, what we can do with it, and pushing the argument that we should be using more AI and embracing it because it's here, which there's a lot of merit to that. And you mentioned an interesting thing, which was that ethics is not the same as legal compliance. So structurally, schools and the education industry is using compliance as the control measure and having a philosophical debate about whether we should embrace it. Like, is that, how do you see that in your work? I hope that question made sense.
Yeah. And so I guess the compliance aspect is often one of the main constraints on like what is possible. But then interestingly, what we've seen over the last year, certainly since ChatGPT was released, and there's been this rush to deploy these systems in all contexts. Like, I mean, we've seen the rush from developers to get these systems out and to build a bigger, more impressive model and get it out into public domain. But then we've seen the rush across all industries or across all sectors or organizations rushing to deploy this before we've really thought through whether that's responsible, whether it's appropriate, what the risks might be, and before the safeguards are in place. And at the moment, there's lots of discussions around emerging regulation around AI. The EU AI Act is making its way, will likely become the kind of state of the art in terms of regulation, and AI will kind of set the standards, but we're not there yet. We're still kind of developing what the regulatory frameworks look like. And there is a danger that there's been this kind of rush to deploy these systems before we've really anticipated what those harms might be. So that's
can I give a specific example? Sorry to
go ahead.
I know that there are a lot of schools who are currently, for example, using artificial intelligence to give feedback to students, to write reports for students. And that's something which there's an ethical piece of that, as to it's obviously highly efficient from a school perspective, and it is very good quality reach stuff, but at the same time that means you're putting personal data somewhere in the ether that you're not in control of. Would you advocate that schools don't do that until we have a better framework, or is that just going to be par for the course as we learn how to use it?
Yeah, I think there needs to be a lot more cautiousness here. There's like, these systems can do useful things. Like, a lot of the hype and sensationalism that we've heard over the last years is overblown. Like, there's lots of things that these have been deployed to do where they really shouldn't be being used. I mean, a large language model is basically a stylistic tool that can predict what sequence of words is likely to be convincing or compelling, but has no understanding of the context or the significance or relevance of those words. And it's being used often in ways where it's really overstepping that and suggesting that it can provide insights, or that it can be relied on for the accuracy or the veracity of the words it produces, and it can't. And then you brought up the issue of sharing data. when a lot of the systems that exist at the moment are commercially developed systems, and a large part of the business model is collecting data and using that data to train future models, using it for commercial purposes. We don't have a lot of transparency around what's happening, or we need to be really careful about how data is shared, and particularly when that's sharing somebody else's data, personal data. I think in the context of education, like there are lots of useful things that maybe these tools can do, which are kind of like back office things. There are things that are like improving efficiency, maybe developing lesson plans, that kind of stuff. But the things which are direct interaction with children, direct interaction with students, or having like clear outputs in terms of affecting a student's attainment, or making decisions about how a student receives education, those are really risky, dangerous things, and they're where we need humans. We need caring, creative humans who can make those judgments and can really shape the education that children and students receive. So I think we need to be very careful about the kinds of tasks we're using these systems for.
Thank you.
I think we've got time for one more quickish question, if anyone has got something that's not that maybe can be put fairly succinctly.
Yeah, we've got questions from Talia and Gwen, Charles.
Yeah. Can we take the question from, we're going to have to take one or the other. Talia is asking about the digital divide. So AI in connection to the digital divide between North and South, the global South, and particularly impacting healthcare and, I guess, society more generally, really. Is this something that comes into your sort of ambit of considerations? Is this something that concerns you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Digital divide is I mean, it's a real, brings a real set of concerns around equity and access to technology and to the benefits of these technologies. And a global scale, but also digital divides within the UK as well. There's very significant digital divides between access to technologies, access to reliable internet services. And as we see these technologies becoming integrated into systems, that there are risks associated with these technologies, but there are also very clear benefits. And in education, we see that the potential benefits of having access to generative AI that can support and facilitate learning. Digital divide is a real set of concerns as who has access to the benefits of these technologies, but also who has access to the ability to shape and inform decision making around how these technologies are used, and that's another set of concerns. Apologies, that's not directly to healthcare, but it is a really significant area of concern. Another project I'm involved in, which I realize we're out of time, but another project I'm involved in at the Turing is around data justice, and particularly looking at advancing data justice internationally, and thinking about who has access to shape the future or to shape decisions that affect their lives. And particularly in an international dimension, we see that as being a really, really important set of considerations.
With the whole area of decision making, public policy making, and how that's being shaped by the public discourse on AI is a big one, isn't it? Because I think a lot of what you're saying is about hoping that people can become more aware about the ethical issues, the values issues around AI, so that we can actually have an intelligent public discourse, and that can inform the decisions that are being made by policymakers around the world, including obviously the EU AI Act.
Yeah, no, definitely. And it's really important that we kind of cut through the hype and sensationalism. I think sometimes like the sensational claims, including sensational claims around existential risk, are used as a way of kind of shutting down the debate, as making this seem like it is something that is so hard to engage with. It's so complex. It's so scary or extreme that it's out of the hands of everyday people. And that is absolutely not true. And that is it's a discourse that is used for that purpose of kind of closing down the debate. So yeah, it's absolutely essential that we talk about AI in grounded ways, in ways that recognize the realities of how AI is already impacting people's lives, and that emphasizing the relevance and the importance of everybody having a say in those processes.
Well, that's coming through loud and clear, and I think that's just such a big point. Thank you so much, Vali, and we'll no doubt hear from you a little bit more as we go on. Gwen, sorry about not asking your question about data collection and how it's how the data is looked after. I felt it was already a little bit answered before.
Actually, Charles, it's not about data collection. It's about transparency and equity, and it's about maintaining, allowing children, individuals, the opportunity to be released from once they've engaged with these tools, once they've signed up and started using them, the data is being collected. And my question is about how can that data be released? How can it be removed if a child or an individual decides that they no longer want to engage with it? That's my concern.
I understand the concern. Actually, it's a very big and valid one. Shall we park that just for a moment, Gwen? Because otherwise we're going to run out of time a little bit, and hopefully we'll have time to get back to that a little bit later. We're going to move to Paquita Desueta, who's our other speaker, who's kindly coming along and talking to us today, and from there may be a lot in common in what both our speakers are saying, I suspect. But Paquita is certainly coming to it from a very different angle, in that her background is very much in clinical care, healthcare, and healthcare in a very broad sense, as an ex-GP for many years, and as a lecturer at the
Imperial College.
Imperial College, sorry, and also on various other ethical bodies of ethics elsewhere, mostly to do with medicine. Paquita, over to you.
Thank you very much. I mean, a quick disclaimer. So I'm not an expert in AI, but I have tried to inform myself and read a number of books, articles, and gone to seminars, etc. So, and I did some work when I was a member of the Bioethics Council and Bioethics. The Nuffield Council, sorry. So is that okay? I'll just try sharing my screen and try to do it as smoothly as possible. So, okay. Can you see it now?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so I'll have to move this thing so that I can get the little, okay. So my focus will be on human AI and human flourishing. That's something obviously as a healthcare professional has been of great interest to me. And just thinking, so there are many definitions of flourishing, and just these are a couple here. The idea being that it is a dynamic thing, that our lives unfold over time and does involve choices and actions. And we are informed by others, their shared values, their expectations, and we are subject to constraints. But fundamentally, the pursuit of flourishing is shaped by our personally held deep values and our life commitments. And Aristotle, more than 2,500 years ago, described eudaimonia, practicing and fully developed the virtues. He had a theory of virtue ethics. And it's also described as a state of deep well-being in which a person feels their life has meaning and purpose, and a well-lived life. So what are the key ingredients? I use the acronym of PRAM just to help. So this picture isn't really relevant, although that person looks happy and flourishing, and hopefully the baby as well. But Ryan and Decky crystallized their theory called self-determination theory, and the facilitation of intrinsic motivation, social development, and well-being. And also Martin Seligman has done a lot of research on flourishing. He's a positive psychologist, so PERMA is positive emotions, engagement, relationships, and I think it's meaning and accomplishment. So very similar, really. So I'll just go back to that just so we remember. So I'm going to go through these key things: meaning, relationships, autonomy, and mastery. What is the impact of AI on these? Just to add that one needs to take into account, and that's been mentioned by Veri, on the social determinants of health and their importance. And Willin et al. Did some research, some qualitative and quantitative research, and they interviewed a number of people in Cleveland in the US who actually said that their pursuit of flourishing was influenced. Two out of the three most common mentioned were a stable income and items that link to poverty and social status, access obviously to food, to decent housing, education, transport, and experiencing that sense of safety, freedom from discrimination and structural oppression. So what impact does it have? Well, as we've been told, AI can handle a huge amount of data at great speed and efficiency, but actually needs a lot of that data to be trained. And in medicine, it holds promise, although there's a lot of hype, I have to say, for diagnosis, particularly in imagery. There's robotic surgery, treatment plans, reducing errors, discovering new medicines, vaccines, and so on. And that was very important in the COVID pandemic. There is climate change AI and other bodies that are looking at how it can be used to give predictions and models for climate change, and allowing hopefully more targeted strategies to mitigate the worst effects, which we are seeing currently all the time. But, and I just want to stress this, it does require, AI isn't this lovely abstract cloud. It actually involves a huge number of computers, very large computers that in turn require a great deal of energy and water. And it has a very large carbon footprint. And Kate Crawford, who's written a book called Atlas of AI, goes into this in some depth. We've heard about generative AI and large language models and its use in education, but looking at grading and so on, and the dangers there. And it could be used to monitor and rectify inequalities in health and wealth, but we'll go into that in a little while. So going to meaning and purpose in work, just thinking about work, and this idea of generative AI creating art, books. Apparently Amazon is being flooded with AI-written books, scripts, and we've heard about how script writers in Hollywood went on strike about this, grant applications, essays, and so on. We're told it could supplant or complement diagnostic communication and therapeutic skills of doctors. Lawyers are using it, although again, there's some problems there. Programmers. So I'm kind of thinking, well, what's left? What's the point? If you are somebody, a writer who really enjoys the craft, the wordsmithery of your work and getting it right and so on. But if you're told, oh, well, somebody else can do that, this poem can be generated, where's the joy, the sense of accomplishment? What's going to happen to all these jobs and careers? Have we really thought properly about this? I know there is some thinking, but how useful is it? Disinformation, we've heard how you can generate fake films, voice, everything. And that is going to be very, very serious with the elections coming up next year, presidential election in the US and so on, and in Europe. How can we identify these so-called hallucinations, or what I would call confabulation, the authentic from the fake? So I think there are real dangers here. Just again, continue on meaning. Susan Greenfield wrote, she's a neuroscientist. She wrote this book, Tomorrow's People. It's sort of a bit like Aldous Huxley's book, Brave New World. This kind of dystopian, hedonistic techno world where we can live out our fantasies, a sort of virtual world, increasingly monitored and controlled. We've heard about that. And she believes we may lose what we hold most precious about being human: imagination, individuality, memory, love, free will, wisdom, unless, as citizens, as Mary's very said, we are fully participating in the design, the implementation, and the regulation of AI. So getting back to the relationships, really interesting work's been done here. Robert Balding's got a very good TEDx talk. He talks about this longitudinal, the longest probably in existence, a Harvard study of adult development, which involves more than 1,000 people being followed up right up to death and beyond for their children since 1938. And Holt-Lundstad did a meta-analysis that encompassed 300,000 people across several countries. And what is found with all these studies is that strong social connections significantly improve health and increase longevity. Good, trusting relations. You don't need that many, but you need some. That loneliness is more harmful than smoking, and there's an epidemic of loneliness, including in young people, is more harmful than smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And just to add, Bowlby's work and others, that secure attachments in childhood are key to future resilience and mental well-being. So relationships, we are social creatures, and Aristotle also acknowledged this, and we absolutely thrive on those relationships, our attachments, and the opposite if we don't have them. So I'm just trying to move. And then just thinking about caring, and there's a whole ethics of care and feminist ethics, which sort of somehow kind of gets displaced, and it's marginalized. We're certainly not in this country spending nearly enough time, money, and effort on social care. And it's just, how much can or should, artifacts, chatbots, robots, and so on replace humans? I think that's something that really needs careful consideration. Why can't we are interconnected, why can't we care for each other? Yes, we need help, we need resources, it's difficult, skilled work, and should be acknowledged and properly remunerated. And in Japan, this is a real problem, and I think that's Paro the seal that this lady is clutching as an alternative to a real human being. So, and then just thinking, social connections, social media was supposed to improve connections and healthy relationships, but actually there's certainly some troubling evidence that is building up that is showing actually that intensive use of social media is correlated with increased loneliness, anxiety, depression, eating disorders, and disturbed sleep associated with excessive use of social media by young people. And one survey showed that children, young people are, using social media and games at least 5 hours a day. That's 2/3 of children, young people, which adds up to something like 72 days a year. So it's what is being left out as a result of this. And just to remind ourselves that we are also in relationship with the natural world, and how much are we disconnecting from it when we are tuned into our computers and earphones. And human flourishing needs planetary flourishing. And we are embodied creatures. We need human touch to thrive. And there was a lot of touch hunger even before the pandemic. And I've written about this. And again, something that tends to be ignored. So then moving on to the A for autonomy. Who's in charge? Well, we've heard about that and the worry of the people who are in charge. This is Susie Allegri, who's written this book and who is passionate about human rights. She's a human rights lawyer and the freedom of thought. And she says it's not just vital for individuals, but it's the beating heart of our dynamic and prosperous society, and that it's very much a human rights issue. And we know about surveillance. We've heard about this. And Shoshana Zuroff has written about the surveillance capitalism, disinformation, attention grabbing, manipulation, the mining of our private thoughts and emotions for power and profit. And Jaron Lanier, who is an old hand from the tech world, he describes the use in Facebook and other entities, platforms, unethical algorithms that are designed to create addiction and polarization. And then Nicholas Carr, who's written an interesting book called The Glass Cage, Who Needs Humans Anyway, talks about the degeneration effect, and that's something else that Susan Greenfield was very concerned with and other neuroscientists. that computer automation hampers our minds to process information into knowledge, which is different from information, and knowledge into know-how, making use of it. In a sense, we're outsourcing our brains. Memory, spatial orientation, which was absolutely key to us as when we were hunter-gatherers, decision-making, they can atrophy through non-use. You know, what if you don't use it, you lose it, is very true of our brain. And to achieve mastery, and I see this so much in medicine, you need to develop tacit knowledge. And that comes from the lived experience and reflection. And you have to rehearse it, as we know, again and again until it becomes sort of automatic. And we have to get the feedback. And then you get sometimes what's called automatization or expert pattern recognition, which Kahneman talks about in Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow. So we've heard about inclusiveness and inequalities, and Michael Marmot's done a lot of work on social determinants of health and inequality and the impact it has. And this came very much to the fore during the COVID pandemic, and how algorithmic biases embed inequality, and that biases also lead, as we've heard, to these other things like unfair criminal convictions, job opportunities, etc. And Kath O'Neill has written a book called Weapons of Mass Destruction, where she gives examples of this. So in conclusion, I have tried to acknowledge the good, and undoubtedly there are benefits, but I do remain skeptical. And I do believe that in our current social, economic, political context, where power, profit, and self-interest tend to dominate, where autocracy is on the rise, as we've seen, and democracy is severely threatened, and when a small number of very powerful, rich people whose motives and ethics I question are controlling the technology. And so I submit on balance that it offers more harms than benefit for the future flourishing of mankind, unless we take control of it. And it isn't the gateway to nirvana. So I'm sorry. Thank you very much for listening. And here my email, etc., ResearchGate, LinkedIn, that you can get on my Twitter handle, though I'm not quite sure how much longer I'll be on Twitter. So thank you.
Good. Thank you so much, Bakita. That's
so I went on too long. Sorry.
That's okay. It's very powerful stuff, and I think you know, looking at it, not necessarily offering us different conclusions or pointing out different issues than Buddy, but actually coming at it from very much a humanitarian point of view, the human experience and human thriving. So I think that's fantastic. I'm just wondering whether have we got time for one question? Do you think, Alan?
Yeah, maybe take, well, there's Gwen, and also Ian has a question. So maybe Gwen's question either from before or what she's thinking now.
Yeah, Gwen. Is Gwen still there?
I'm here, yes, sorry. Right. Thank you very much, Mari and Pakita. Honestly, I really thank you for what you've been sharing with us. I guess from my perspective, I am concerned about people being able to be released from engaging in this kind of stuff and their data. How does, you know, once they've got involved, how can people remove their data from the data banks? The other thing is that we know that social media is significantly influencing cultural values, attitudes, and behaviors. We only need to look at some of the closed face group communities to see how actually parents are engaging in almost like a feeding frenzy when, you know, something is posted up there and it's a little bit of, it could be a little bit of gossip or something about individuals in the community or whatever, and also how that is impacting on children, because again, we've got huge issues with young people and their use of social media, not only in schools but generally all the time. They're, you know, I do have, I think, yes, it's about how do we raise awareness? How do we raise awareness and true understanding about social media and its impact?
And is it going to get worse because of AI? That's also the point, I guess.
I think that is my concern. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Because of all this data that's being gathered about all of us all of the time.
Akita, do you want to have a go at that?
How do we raise awareness? I think we've got to keep talking, and again, can we get a platform for that? It's not always easy. And I personally think that we should have citizens' assemblies on these issues, and really get people together from different backgrounds, different ages, different viewpoints. I think it's fantastic we're involving children who can in turn influence government decisions, which in turn, hopefully, and then it becomes global and international, working together, that they can influence these very powerful companies. I mean, restrict them and shape the way we go forward. But
I agree, provided provided from the kids. I mean, I think absolutely the voices of children are great.
Absolutely.
But we've got to have that. We've got to have a very good cross section, so that all groups are represented.
I agree. I would definitely
not just our most articulate children.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Alan, another question you highlighted. I couldn't quite see the question, but you've got it.
Yeah, it was Ian. So Ian, would you quickly like to ask the question that you had in mind earlier?
Yes, thank you very much. The place of values, I think correctly described by Pakita here, is that it underpins intention. And unless we sort out the values, we will become indiscriminate gophers. And of course, the quote I put up there suggests that organizations are almost by definition indiscriminate gophers. They're going for more money and going for this and going for that. The point I make that I'd like some sort of a discussion on is that without further work on values, we will be deemed to be indiscriminately going somewhere without intention. And for me, the work that we do has in many ways been done many times before over millennia, and we could do worse than work very hard to sift it for reason, justification, and our intentions as humanity.
Yeah. And perhaps, Ian, we could take that as a comment rather than a question, and then we can move on to the next session. Is that all right, Charles?
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
So
I just wanted to very quickly say that there is a philosopher called Shannon Vallow, who's in Edinburgh, who's actually written a very good book. I mean, it's quite dense, but it's very, but who brings up the issue of virtues and how we must become, virtuous users of tech, which is strongly linked to values. So it's another thing one can bring in, but it's very much again linked to flourishing lives. Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So I'm delighted to be introducing Celia, and actually, Celia, everybody should know that you are the inspiration for this event, because I attended a session that you ran, shared it with Neil and Charles, who really liked the sound of it, and that led us to create this format. And our intention was that the two speakers might give us some food for thought, and you've certainly done that. So now, Celia, if I could hand over to you, you're going to take around about half an hour to guide us through an exercise to see what has come out for us from those two talks that we've listened to. Celia.
Thank you so much for the lovely intro. Hi, everybody. So yes, I've prepared a little bit of a small design sprint session. I find it always amazing when we have speakers who give us like input and inspiration and thought, food for thought. But I also wanted to give a chance for everybody on the call to share a little bit in where do you see AI and values? Where do you see the intersection between AI and values? And so we're going to be using a link called a Miro board. I'll share my screen before I give you all access, just so you don't get surprised by the tool. But bear with me. You should see it in a second. There it is. So as part of the work that I do is I run an innovation lab, and a lot of it is focused around running interactive sessions, making sure we hear from everybody, just not only the loudest voices in the room. And so I am going to be sharing in the chat now a board link. So if you click on the link, you can join me on the board. It's a virtual whiteboard. It will ask you for a password, but you don't need to set up an account. I've kept the password simple. It's values 2023. So you can just copy it if you like to. But I should start seeing you join me on the board, hopefully, in a second. And how are we going to use it? I'm going to guide you through a number of, I think we have 4 questions in total. And I'd like to hear every participant's thoughts on these questions. How to use Miro. So as you can see, I keep zooming in and out. That's the best way to make sure you can read the sticky notes that you're creating. We have sticky notes here on the left. So if I zoom in a little bit closer, if I click one, then I've selected the sticky note. If I click once, then I select the sticky note. If you click twice, you can start typing on the sticky notes, so you can share your thoughts on the sticky notes. And then if you click and hold, that allows you to move the sticky note on the board. So these are the simple ways of using it. So I'll repeat it once more. One click, you'll see a blue box shows up. That means I've selected the notes. A double click allows me to type. And then click and hold allows me to move the sticky note. I can see a number of people on the board, just checking if there were any comments. No, something else. Fantastic. So feel free, you can jump in at any point. I'm going to bring you all to my boards. So I thought we're going to start. Also, we're going to do time-based exercises, just so we can make sure we can read through your notes and we can go through all 4 questions. But I'll give us 2 minutes, and I want to make sure that everybody can use the boards. If you can grab a sticky note on the left, and if you could answer the question. So if all of us together, if we could design our own AI system, what values should be embedded in that system? So you've heard a couple of inputs. I'll give us 2 minutes, and the timer should pop up. And I'm looking forward to seeing what everybody shares. I'm also glad to see you're all naturals at it. You've jumped right in, so well done. Fantastic. We have 1 more minute left. So if you haven't had a chance to share your notes, I see a note without a sticky note. I'll make sure we'll add that on a post-it as well. Perfect. We have 10 more seconds left, so make sure you finish your sticky notes. Lovely. So time's up. I'm going to do a quick run through so you can see what everybody has written. So we've had fairness, I'm assuming it's fairness and understanding, which we've had quite a lot. We've had equality, integrity, diversity, truth, respect, the ability to opt out, equal opportunity access. We also have, again, the ability to remove data and be forgotten. Equity, transparency, fairness, truth, compassion, understanding differences. That's really interesting. I kept also thinking empathy could be, if we see it as a value that should be embedded. Transparency, safety, best interests of all humans, no power abuse, honesty, integrity, honor, inclusivity, equity, openness, trust, and honesty, humanism, fairness, equity, transparency. I think the no was still something else to be added to it. Diversity and fairness and equity. Great, thank you so much. We're going to move on to the second question now, which is a bit more complex or a bit trickier, so I'll give you some extra time. But we wanted to discuss and hear from you, what are the potential benefits of AI in helping values bring us together? So how could we leverage AI to support the values that you've previously wanted to embed in your AI systems? So where do you see benefits in the AI space to bring us together with regards to and in supporting values? So I'll give you 3 minutes. You can take some time if you want to think about it, but it's the same as before. I'll bring you all to me. So you should see the question and the sticky notes on the left. Feel free to also add examples to your notes if you'd like to, if you know of any examples where AI is already helping values bring us together. We have 1 more minute left, so still some time to share some of your thoughts, but I can also really see some great points on the board. Five seconds left, so if you could make sure you move your sticky notes to the board, otherwise I'm happy to help out. Let me move one of them, and perfect. We have a second one here. Wonderful. While somebody's finishing their sticky note, we can start looking at some of them. And please, I'll read through them, jump in, because it would be great if some of you can explain some of the examples you've used. So we've had access to helpful information about others. So some of the potential benefits of AI is access to helpful information. Then we've had a note around kite mark tools, sites and services that embody our values, that individuals know that they are safe to use. I'm not familiar with kite mark tools. Would the person who shared the note perhaps share an example? If not, that's also okay. But if at some point you'd like to jump in, please do feel free to share. We have increased.
Sorry, Celia. That was about. Sorry, I do apologise. So kite mark. When you buy a product, you get a kite mark on it to say that it's it's gone through tests and rigorous tests and it's safe to use. And I think that if people could, if there was some way of kite marking to show people that it's actually safe to use, that would be really good. Again, it comes back to then who's going to be doing the kite marking.
That is always an open question, but I really like the idea. Thank you so much for clarifying, Gwen. We have increased confidence, scientific progress in areas of healthcare, scientific progress in areas of health and care, etc. AI allows people of different cultures and languages to communicate and come together, greater connection, giving greater access to people. AI in assistive technologies, for example, image recognition to support people with visual impairment. That is a lovely idea. We often hear image recognition only in negative contexts. So great to hear that. AI helps taking care of the boring, mundane stuff so that we can focus on more important things. AI is helping to facilitate conversation like this and is bringing them into the mainstream and to the wider attention of policymakers. AI can be used to translate values into different contexts, both literally through language and contextually. That is an exciting one. The person who shared that thought, do you have any examples of where this has already taken place, or is this still an open exploratory idea?
Hi, it was me. Even Google Translate is effectively using artificial intelligence and technology more broadly, right? I know we're talking about AI today, but there's also just it's becoming the central building block of most technologies, communication technologies too. So I do mentoring with schools. We've got a client in Taiwan at the moment, and when we were working with their teachers, we're just using live translation, which wasn't possible a few years ago, but now is becoming basically normal. But contextually, there are cultural differences between the way that, say, British people view politeness versus Japanese versus Iranian and so on. And there are obviously books you could look these things up on, but the things like artificial intelligence in a business context are making it possible to pretty much live understand what you should do, shouldn't do, could do, how you could better relate to different cultures and different groups of people. And that hopefully would develop a positive value context for us to work in.
Lovely. Thank you so much for sharing. I found that a very exciting idea. And then we also have more connections to people, which I'm going to group with the additional connections. Lovely. I think I didn't miss anyone. So going now on to the next part, our next question is going to be, I see we have some people already excited to start sharing, but we'd like to use the time to look at what are the potential risks of AI in preventing values bringing us together. So if we put our more critical hats on, I'll give you perhaps 2 minutes to answer the question so you can share the thoughts around what are the potential risks in preventing values bringing us together. And I've started the timer. We are at the 20-second mark, so make sure you had a chance to at least grab one sticky note and share your thoughts. And time's up. So taking a look at what you shared on potential risks of AI in preventing values, bringing us together, you've mentioned the challenge of groupthink. Somebody shared practice. Could you perhaps elaborate a little bit more? You can do that on the sticky note if you like, but it would be great to hear what about practice is a potential risk. We also have greater digital divide, cyber determinants of health, the last thing we need now, a tool for necropolitics. What do you mean by necropolitics? Could the person who shared that share a little bit more?
Yes, so this is Talia from Beirut.
Hi, Talia.
Hi. So necropolitics is a term more or less coined by Achille Mbembe, who is a well-known African author, and he also works in the US. So it's basically similar to biopolitics, when those who possess superpowers decide who gets to live and who gets to die, in a very strange way, though. So that's really oversimplifying it. Okay.
Got it. Thank you very much. Distrust. So that is a potential risk. Moving on next, innovation driven by commercial interest rather than societal value. Dominance of a small number of powerful actors. Indoctrination. A small group of people making decisions that will impact everyone's lives. I'll start grouping them. Increased or exacerbate embedded inequality. That is a big challenge. Fraud and criminal use, corporate mismanagement, causing a lack of trust in technology. I'll put that into commercial interests. Cultural evolution, blending diversity, reduced and impacted by use of normative descriptors, averages of behavior, and language. Who shared that? Could you elaborate or bring up an example, perhaps?
Hi, sorry, it was me again.
That's okay. You don't need to apologize.
It probably isn't particularly well written, but it was really just the fact that, I mean, I know large language models are pretty smart and can obviously cover a lot of things, but there's been a lot of writing about the fact that technology is tended to be created by companies led and filled with white men. And therefore, if there are any biases, and we already have this with Google and the way that they design their algorithms and things like that, so any biases related to culture and so on is going to kind of continue to keep us in this white middle-aged male norm rather than a broader cultural understanding and breadth. And the fact that cultures evolve. I'm a geography teacher by trade, and lots of our cultures are developed over time through cultural diffusion and mixing. And if everything ends up being like the current, what a lot of people don't realize about ChatGPT is the current one is based on harvesting that was done in like 2018. So it doesn't even take into account anything on the internet that happened since 2018 or 2019. So it's creating this artificially old-fashioned view of something. And that means that it's going to shrink any or impact any cultural diversity later on.
Great. Thank you so much for clarifying, John. Moving on to the final sticky note. So we have might is right, not direction of the... I'm not sure what exactly this is referring to. So if you could, the person shared that, if you could finish, is it of the ye rather telling what to see?
So that's my mistake. It's connected to loss of real education, which according to Socrates is basically directing the eye where it ought to see, not telling it what to see. So that's it. Over.
Gotcha. Thank you so much, Talia. And then we have disconnection, groupthink, monopoly of superpowers, and a reliance on technology over in real life interaction. Great. We have a couple of minutes left. I'm not going to go too much over, but the final question that we want to look at is, can you share practical suggestions to give AI the best chance in helping values bring us together? I think you've mentioned a number of challenges that have come up so far. So what would be your practical suggestions? I'll give us 2 minutes. So feel free, grab a sticky note on the left and share your thoughts. We are in our 30-second mark. So make sure you grab a sticky note. And time's up. Let's have a look through. So what are the practical suggestions you have shared? So we have ongoing open dialogue and discussion, keep channels of communication open for everyone, education and dialogue. We have encourage people to use AI, not as a way to make decisions for all of us. We need to be at the start of the process all the time. We have education, so educate the youth about the importance of believing in one human race, ensuring that our communities remain funded, active, and thrive, targeted legislation, become informed, teaching young people about ethics. I can see where we got inspired, and the importance of them in all aspects of human development, for example, sciences. As Very states, important to focus on benefits and risks together. I hope we also did that today. Not allowing power and money to be the driving force. Palto's first generation, we need to re-educate people. Focus on civics. A practice ground for people to play, experiment, and learn. Couldn't agree more. I do have a special place in my heart for experimentation. Legislation and accountability. We'll group those two together. And then we have educating all about AI from a young age. Celebrate success stories. Believing in humanism and equity, and developing critical understanding of AI among wider public. Fantastic. I think those were all the sticky notes. So as you can see, this was a very short run through to together as a group unpack some of the themes that we've been thinking about on the potential benefits, the potential risks, and practical suggestions. And it's been amazing to see what you have all shared. I think we could have gone for quite some time, but my time is up. So I'll be handing it back to Alan for any notes or thoughts or if there are any questions.
Celia, thank you so much for racing us through that process, which has been just so productive. And I hope that people have enjoyed the ideas coming to the top of their head, seeing what other people are contributing as well. So in the last 5 minutes that we have, what I'd like to invite you all to do, please, is to use the chat. And imagine that after this call, you're talking to a close colleague or friend, and they say to you, oh, you've just been on this session about AI and values. What's your one key takeaway? What is a single imperative that you've identified? And if we could capture all of those, just one from each person in the chat, using very concise language, it will give us a brilliant summary of today's session. So while you're starting to do that, I'd just like to thank Paquita and Vari and Celia for making this such an engaging, interesting, thought-provoking session. And when you've completed your imperative, please feel free to drop off. Charles, Neil, and I will stay on until you've managed to complete your contribution, and hopefully see you at future UK Values Alliance events. Thanks very much, everybody.
While you're writing, including all those World Values events that are going to be happening in the next, well, particularly around the 19th World Values Day itself.
So maybe, Charles, we could communicate a summary of all of these points as part of World Values Day itself, actually. That
would be fabulous. I was going to ask, and I don't want to distract anyone from putting down their thoughts, but Celia, I hope, can we have will we get a summary? Can we have a summary of some kind?
Yeah, of course. So I can take pictures and we can extract the information as well. The board is also going to stay open. So if any of the participants keep the link, you can still go back to it. What I will do is I'll just freeze the content so we don't lose it. But yes, I can share it with everybody. So I can share it with you, Charles and Alan, and you can also make it available to everybody else.
We're going to, if Vali and Paquita are happy, we're intending to share slides, if that's okay with both of you. I would guess it is. And we could include, some slides of the findings, all our thoughts from that exercise, the mirror exercise, in that. So if I could just cut and paste them onto a slides or whatever. And as Alan was saying, we can share them more widely too.
Could I be cheeky and ask a quick question?
No, John.
Sorry, Alan, I'm a terrible talker. It's a question specifically for Mirai, but it might, and I'm probably, if I murdered the pronunciation of that, I apologise hugely. But it might benefit other people who are here. So I was digging around the Alan Turing Institute website and I found a guide for the responsible use of AI. And it's in the public sector specifically. So I know it's, but is that something that, are there other resources, I guess? Is there a good place for us to start looking in your realm for more information?
Yeah, is that the ethics and safety in the public sector guidance?
Yes, public policy program stuff.
Yeah. So this I work in public policy programs. This is connected to that. And that's certainly a very useful guidance point, a starting point. That's focused particularly on uses of AI in the public sector, so public sector organizations and bodies. It'd be particularly useful resource. There are, there's a growing kind of proliferation of guidance documents and resources around generative AI, particularly in different industries. I could potentially have a think of useful resources to share afterwards, if that's of interest. What you have found on our website is definitely a good starting point.
Thank you. Thanks, Alan. Thanks, Charles.
The WHO also released on their website in PDF format guidelines to ethical uses of AI. You might want to check that, John.
Merci. I will.
Je vous en prie.
Well, some fantastic thoughts and takeaways, really, that were getting posted on the chat. I don't think there's time to read through them all, or even any of them. I think we'll just have to circulate them again with the slides from the session, which we'll try and get out to you, if not today, then early next week. I think early next week, more realistically, if Celia's going to send us the results of that Miro exercise. Good, fantastic. So I think we just, when everyone's take your time, finish up what you're writing, and just again to thank Vali and Nikita and Celia and all of you really for contributing to a very, very thought-provoking and very interesting session. I think we've all learnt a huge amount, haven't we? And more to the point, probably, we've had our thought processes jolted into action and fed a lot of stuff to really make us think very, very much more deeply, as we hope that the wider public will do. And I guess that is part of what we can do collectively, is to try and encourage that debate.
Absolutely. Nobody's going to sleep tonight, are they? They're going to have very busy brains.
Thanks, Barry.
Okay, thanks. We've got I think we've got everyone's contributions by now, and thank you, Vali. Thank you, thank you, Bakita, and all others who have posted comments and stuff in the chat. Great to see you.
Thank you very much.
We look forward, as Anna said, to seeing you at the next UK Values Alliance event. Actually, there's loads of them taking place that we've certainly are behind if they're not at our events. There's Bakita's doing an event on World Values Day for the Values in Healthcare Forum, and Alan's doing events, several events, and Lisa, you're not doing an event, but never mind. You're here anyway. That's good.
Yeah.
And so we'll look forward to seeing you perhaps at those events, but certainly another time.
Yeah, definitely.
Fantastic. Good. Well, shall we say goodbye and thank you very much, everyone.
Yep.
I'll close down if that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much.
And the recording will be available. Sorry, someone asked me, Bakita, you were asking me about the recording. So we will make that recording available. We're not going to post it publicly, I don't think, but we'll certainly make it available to anyone who wants to have a look at it on request.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you very much, Kevin.
Bye.